I definitely took the road less traveled to become a medical doctor. I think there are many shorter, more direct ways to get there, but some might say perhaps not as much fun. And I think nothing you do in life is for nothing. So I think I've gained a lot of knowledge on my career into medicine later in life. I think that stands me in good stead now. But
Hello, I'm John Brink and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people that are wondering, I know Canada, where is Prince George? Well, it is in British Columbia and it is about 500 miles or 800 kilometers north of Vancouver, right in the middle of British Columbia. An amazing, amazing province. And again, today, an amazing podcast because we are podcasting around the world and have guests from any and all the places in the world. And today, again, a very special guest. His name is Dr. Heinrich Nolte, and he is located in South Africa, and in particular in the area of Johannesburg, in a city, I believe, we'll ask him that, Safelpoort. And he is a medical doctor, but not only a medical doctor, he has specialties in a number of areas. He had an MBBCh from the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa, a PhD in Human Movement Studies, University of Pretoria, an MA in Biokinetics from the University of Pretoria, and then a BA in Human Movement Science, University of Pretoria. Amazing bio. Can I call you Heinrich?
yes, John, thank you very much for having me. Please call me Heinrich. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Amazing bio, Heinrich. So tell us a bit about you and then about South Africa and the location of where are you, and then a bit about your studies and how did you get to where you are, because it's not only limited to what I already indicated, but you are also entrepreneurial and you are an author of many briefs and documents on different topics. So start off maybe with tell us where you were born and then how you fell into the medical profession.
Yes, thanks very much for the opportunity. As you can see in the background, it's quite dark. It's 6 o'clock at night in Pretoria, South Africa. As you correctly said, John, it's about an hour's drive from Johannesburg, which is perhaps the more famous or well-known city internationally, where one of our biggest international airports are. But Pretoria is considered the capital of the country. So South Africa at the south end of the African continent. I was born here with my brothers. I'm the middle of three brothers, of which my younger brother, incidentally, is currently living in British Columbia, in Prince George. I'm sure we'll touch on that. But yes, born in Pretoria, went to school there in both my primary schooling as well as my secondary schooling, and then also most of my university or post-schooling studies at the University of Pretoria. And I studied from home. My mom was employed at the same university for a number of years as the head of student affairs. She's a social worker by profession. Yes, so that's where I live currently. I've lived in Pretoria my whole life. I have been privileged to travel mostly for work purposes internationally, but I've always stayed in Pretoria. Currently, I live towards the eastern side of Pretoria City with my family, my wife and our two daughters. One is 11 years and one is 7 old. Yeah. So that's basically where I reside. and where I've been studying and working my whole life.
So a couple of questions, Heinrich, is that your daughter's names, you feel okay to give me the names because they likely will at some point listen to our podcast. Be always nice to acknowledge them, you know.
Yes, yes. Our eldest daughter's name is Mila, and our younger daughter's name is Famke, which has got quite a Dutch origin, Famke.
Yes.
And yes, my wife's name is Kim.
Kim, yeah. And then you have
Yes.
two brothers. You were three brothers altogether, and one is in British Columbia, and then the other one is in the United States, as I understand it.
Yes, yes, 100%. My eldest brother originally qualified as an electronic engineer, and then quite a few subsequent studies of management and technology management, and he works for a large international company. Uh, He was based in Germany for a many number of years, but then took a move within the same company in the US now. And yes, my younger brother only recently left South Africa to settle with his family in Prince George. That's correct.
Yeah, and your younger brother is Reinhard, and he is employed by the Brink group of companies. Just an interesting one. Now, the other part about it that I find interesting, I had an opportunity to meet your parents a month or so ago when they were visiting their two sons, the one in the United States and the other one in Prince George, British Columbia, obviously, and it was their first time, so it was very interesting to meet them and then to spend a little bit of time with them as well. But I find interesting of your family is that all the brothers went into different directions. You're in the medical side, the brother in South Africa is technology side, I believe, and then Reinhard obviously is an operations manager for one of our operations here in Prince George on the lumber side of things. So all three went in different directions.
Yes, I think it is an interesting observation, and although we are very close, I think we grew up in a household with my parents in a privileged environment where we were all encouraged and supported to be able to follow the areas that we had interest in. And I think it's really just a privilege to have had the opportunity to have that support from parents to let us do what we felt attracted to doing. Yeah.
Now, the other point that I found, Heinrich, is that looking at your bio, is that you are obviously a medical doctor, and you have your own company, and you know the H. Nolte Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation Incorporation, but you're just not a medical doctor. You're much more in the area of the body and movement and fitness in that direction. So tell us a bit about that, your specialty in particular.
Yeah, John, perhaps I can tell you, I think I definitely took the road less traveled to become a medical doctor. I think there are many shorter, more direct ways to get there, but some might say perhaps not as much fun. And I think nothing you do in life is for nothing. So I think I've gained a lot of knowledge on my career into medicine later in life. I think that stands me in good stead now. But to answer your question, directly from school, I went to study a degree called Human Movement Sciences, which was an undergraduate degree straight from finishing my secondary schooling. And then after that, I completed an honors degree and qualified as a biokineticist. So it's a term that is quite unique to South Africa, biokinetics. Um, Physical therapist type of qualification. We register with our medical council as a medical allied professional. And basically, we've got a big focus on rehabilitation using movement and rehabilitation type of exercises. So typically, the final phase type of rehabilitation after an injury or after a medical condition or surgical intervention, a biokineticist would do the rehabilitation and getting the patient or the individual or the client back to their former state of functioning. So that was my first qualification. And I also completed a master's degree while at that time while I was working at the Institute for Sports Research at the University of Pretoria. So it is two facets to biokinetics. One is a sporting and sporting performance kind of leg, and then one is a clinical leg working with special populations, meaning cardiovascular rehabilitation, diabetes, orthopedic kind of injuries. And I've always, I think, had more of a fascination with the clinical side than necessarily the sporting performance side. So I worked there for a number of years. Then I had an opportunity to take up a job in a research laboratory linked to military sciences. So I was a civilian my whole life. I was never a uniformed member of the South African Armed Forces, but I worked in a laboratory that mainly conducted research on human performance and therefore soldier performance within the South African context. It was a fascinating job and a part of my life that I'm very thankful for. That I've met amazing people that taught me so much from a personal and a professional point of view, and really full memories of what the time that I had spent. It was a substantial amount of time. I spent at least 16 years within this research laboratory, um, doing mostly work for the South African military, but also various militaries overseas. It was a really good opportunity.
It made
Um,
you,
yes.
and so the area of medicine and medical and is very much in question now around the world in terms of where do we go in terms of quality of life and longevity issues, and then focusing not only on physical but also in terms of diet and exercise and staying fit now becomes the key. And and in fact, I wrote a book about it. It's coming out in the next 2 weeks. Is this one here, Living Young, Dying Old. This is a picture of me, actually. And I'm going to turn 84 this year, and and I'm very conscious. My wife is vegetarian. I'm somewhat of a the vegan and 80-20 or 90-10. So I'm very conscientious about diet, and then I go to the gym and try to stay fit and in shape. So here in North America, and even with the people that I interviewed, and that's why it is so interesting, Heinrich, to have somebody like you with your qualification that are fairly proactive and very much oriented on not just the medical, being a medical doctor, but beyond that in terms of quality in life and other issues relating to that. That is fairly new for us. How is it in South Africa, the medical profession? How does it interact with government? Like here in Canada, we have a universality medical system that everybody virtually gets the same, which means they function very well in case of urgency or critical care, but are not so active in terms of preemptive or being proactive. How is that system? How does the system work in South Africa, I wonder?
It's a very relevant topic and question that you touch on. Very much so locally for us, considering the current political landscape. You know, we just came out of a national election a few weeks ago,
Yes.
and some of your viewers may be aware of obviously the very sensitive history of South Africa, considering the previous apartheid government and regime. I mean, since 1994, when the first democratic elections took place, and the ANC was then elected as the party democratically by the people, you know, many things have improved, and many things have unfortunately not improved. But one very pressing issue is the thing of healthcare in South Africa, now more so than ever, considering that it is a very divided system, being one, a public healthcare system being provided for by the state to anyone that cannot afford their own private health insurance, which is available, readily available, but at a premium cost. And then there's the second group of people that may be in a more privileged financial situation where they will insure themselves through a private insurance to be able to obtain state-of-the-art medical facilities and services available to them within a very, very well-developed private healthcare system within South Africa. I think one that can compete with most in the world. Um, However, it is a very difficult thing, and as you can imagine, from a political point of view, it is something that is garnered a lot of attention. So much so that just 2 or 3 weeks before our national election, a new bill was signed into power to try and roll out a new national health insurance, similar to what I believe your model and the UK model may be, um, trying to put all funds available in one central pool that will now be by the government and incorporate both the old public system and the current private system into one service provider group, which, as you can imagine, is receiving a lot of support and a lot of negativity in the country at the moment.
Yeah, classic things in universality is that each will get the same, may that be good or bad, but in terms of emergency, universality appears in most cases to work well in terms of being proactive and looking at, like for most people, that and I'm a good example at 84. I'm fortunate enough that I'm healthy and fit, and that I can do things being proactive, where most people hear that when they reach the last decade of, or the last 10 years of their lives, they are usually not healthy, and they have a variety of illnesses that, and I say this respectfully, could have likely been prevented if they had been more proactive in terms of understanding the importance of, the classic areas of diet, exercise, sleep, and a number of other factors which are critical. But if you do, the body is extremely forgiving, and I'm not a doc, you are, but from my experience, the body is extremely forgiving to abuse, but to a certain point, and usually in the latter part of life, when all of a sudden it said, I tried everything, the body says, and you just didn't listen to the signals, and so therefore the last 10 years of life are usually difficult, but they don't have to be if you're being proactive. And what we see here, gradually the average lifespan is expanding, but not so much quality of life. And hence my book, and hence your studies are very much on those areas, and so critically important. So so with that being said, the universality in Canada works, but in terms of that, it prevents people from going beyond that or paid for medical, in addition to the normal standard that we have, is not working well. And it is obviously here as far away as the airport, because you can fly into the United States or wherever you want to go, South Africa for that matter, or wherever you want to go, and you can then make it available. So the system is not working well here, and here there is one of the difficulties that we have. Regular medical doctors are difficult to find, and so a lot of people have no medical doctor as part of their health team, and and then end up going to hospital emergency rooms or other locations that can give them at the moment help, or wait till it becomes critical. That then in a lot of cases is difficult, and it's not helpful in terms of longevity.
You touch on very important points, and I think there's a few things. It's interesting for me to hear the need and the shortage that you are mentioning even there in Canada, because we would sit here in South Africa and think that that is something that's only unique to us, perhaps more emphasized than what you experience. But it's not often that we sit and we think someone like a Canada or something like some of the big European countries can have similar challenges. And I think some of the challenges may well be similar, but I think South Africa still has got a very unique burden of disease in terms of also some of the legacy things we need to deal with, considering the divides within large percentages of our population in terms of financial freedom and security is significant. It's really significant. So the comments that you are making in terms of all the important things of the body can take abuse, you said it so well, because it's very often that we see a patient that is committed that abuse to their own body, willingly or unknowingly. And then, like you say, I mean, we can do so much for them up to a point. And after that point, it's like the body just said, I've given my best for you, but you've just abused so long now, and now it's time for me to give up. It said so well, so many individual organ systems are so forgiving, even the kidneys, for instance. You need to lose so much of your kidney function before we can even see it on a metabolic or a blood panel, that by the time we pick it up is substantial. So you make some very good clinical points, John. Yeah. But in South Africa, just to talk about that a little bit, is that we've got poverty, we've got people really, unemployment, housing issues, education that needs to be brought up to certain levels, considering the previous dispensation. And in those individuals, there is sometimes at night a family sitting with no income, informal housing, barely food on the table. Then it becomes difficult to steer into all these things, in terms of the diet and the exercise and all these important things that will make a massive difference. But it's difficult to sell that to someone when there's no electricity at home or there's no food on the table.
Exactly.
And then we unfortunately also have got an added burden of this of medical problems, in terms that we've got a lot of violence in our society. We are unfortunately a very violent society. That has come through being trained as a medical doctor and spent some time in these public health facilities being trained into becoming an independent practitioner, would have spent some time in, like myself, in casualty departments in poor areas where we see a lot of horrible violence. So I think there's a quadruple burden of disease in South Africa, of which violence is one. You know, a lot of alcohol-based violence, and then all the normal, you know, things that we deal with. You know, the obesity, the cardiovascular disease, the diabetes, all of those things on top of some of these additional challenges, unfortunately.
And those are directly related to economic well-being, because, as you said, if you have no light, know that you're fighting for every meal on the table, and that you're basically trying to stay alive, and that the last thing on your mind is going to the gym or worrying about how selective you should be about diet. It's what it is staying alive. And then the other part, Heinrich, again, you know, at my 84 years, I've been always kind of staying in tune with the world as it exists, which is a troubling world in many, many ways, not only because of the wars that are happening in the Ukraine and the Middle East and on and on and on, but South Africa in particular is close to the Dutch. I was born in Holland in 1940 because a lot of the African language relates directly to the Dutch, and there is a lot of families that have a Dutch background. And then you know, the freedom of South Africa, and especially the you know, the reconciliation is now part of the new South Africa. But as I see it, correct me if I'm wrong, it's still a process very much in the making. The concept is there, but it's still a long direction from being completed, if that ever will happen. But at least getting to the point of equal opportunity and all the other sort of things. It plays a big role in the politics. It plays a big role in the everyday life of most people in South Africa. Would I be correct?
You are absolutely correct, John. And you know, it's a subject. It's something that needs to be talked about. It's a sensitive subject, not internationally, but in South Africa, as you can imagine. Like I've said, you know, it's the first time in the past week since our first democratic elections in 1994, in which those elections, the ANC won a vast majority, the African National Congress has been the ruling governing party by majority up to the last election, which was 2 weeks ago. And it's the first time since then, 30 years later, that they have not won an outright majority. And as we speak, it may even be tonight or tomorrow, there will be a new cabinet announced by our president in a government of national unity, which takes us back to the 30 years in history when the first post-apartheid national government unity was formed. And so it feels like there's been perhaps a little bit of a full circle, and we're back at an opportunity where I think many people are looking with lots of anticipation and I think excitement, perhaps, to say that there's a potential here, and hopefully for change to the good for everybody. So everyone is looking at the outcome of the new announcement in the next day or so. Yeah.
Now, South Africa, I have not been there, Heinrich. I hope I will be there at some point. But, you know, it's an absolute, unbelievable, beautiful country, and especially South Africa. How many people live in, I could have looked that up, I didn't, but how many people live in South Africa?
Yeah, so, yeah, we're a fairly big country. If you look at we've got nine provinces that stretch throughout the country. We've got possibly, I would say, probably about 60 million people that
60?
live in South Africa. 60
60?
million, more or less. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And how
yeah.
physically Canada is big, how big would it, just for our guests that are watching us from around the world, how big would it physically be, you know, if I look at Canada or look at the, for comparison to European countries, a lot of people, and I have, including myself, sometimes I look at YouTube, kind of look at the different countries, and then an amazing in a lot of cases, and saying, wow, I didn't realize it was that big. South Africa would be, say, by comparison, compared to some other countries, Canada being one, and maybe one in Europe, or a combination of the ones in Europe.
Yeah, I think obviously when we look at Northern
Approx.
America and Canada, South Africa is quite small, relatively small. But let's think about it. From our northern to our southern border, probably be a distance of about 2,700 kilometers, more or less, from north to south. We've got, for instance, very international landmarks like the Kruger National Park, which is one of the famous wildlife reserves in the world. That by itself, for instance, is the size of Israel. All
Yeah,
right.
so you said in terms of size, it's big, you know, but there is a, I thought it would be bigger, but in terms of 60 million people, that's a lot of people in South Africa.
Yeah, it is a lot of people. And what we are seeing more and more is that we do have now more concentration of people in the cities. Um, Work, economic opportunities, and with that also comes some challenges. But we
Right.
do have unique challenges. I think not unlike you in Canada, where we need to have also medical support and medical services provided to the more rural areas in our country, which is vast.
Yeah, and then the same is somewhat as you already indicated. Canada is very, very big. British Columbia, obviously, most of the people, the population lives close to the U.S. border, within 50 miles or so from the U.S. border, and then
Yeah.
less so in the rest of BC and in Canada. So, so because of the politics and the elections, the economy is based a lot of times on manufacturing, but it's the primary economic driver in South Africa.
Yeah. I think we've got presentation across most industries. However, we're a very mineral-rich country, resource-rich country in terms of, for instance, there's a mining happening. Additionally, and historically, there's always been a very strong mining industry. As you it's a beautiful country, tourism is a significant contributor to the financial turnover of the country. And then basically most industry you will find here. But yeah, so tourism, mining, um, those are big drivers.
So the you were saying there are 9 different provinces, I believe you said, in South Africa. So, but most of the population, then I think South Africa, I think Johannesburg in particular, that's very big, right?
Yeah, that's right. So Johannesburg and Pretoria is in Gauteng, which is the smallest, but it is the financial hub of the country. So it's the financial powerhouse where all the exchange would be, and where most business and industry would be settled. Yeah, absolutely correct.
So, Heinrich, as we kind of getting back to the medical part, how do you see things going forward, in particular, in terms of the medical system that is now changing in South Africa, more like England and British and Canada, universality. You still see opportunities for specialties like that you have, and working not under the umbrella of the universal medical system, but rather specializing in a specialty?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I think the medical doctors are a little bit unsure about how this is going to excuse me, about how this is going
Bless you.
to play out. So yes, sorry, John, to get back to your question, is that I think the new proposed health bill is certainty for many people. I think the public, but also the medical professionals themselves, where the focus is going to be way more on the universal model, as you explained on your side. And we are worried that this may drive away many of the specialists themselves. I think they even more so than the general practitioners are worried about what is their role going to be going forward, and how do I make sure that I can have a part of this new healthcare plan. And it's very uncertain at the moment.
Yeah, and which is pretty much the same here by us now, and especially in the last 10 years or so, where it gradually has become more difficult. Medical doctors are difficult to find, especially they would like to move to the larger centers rather than being further into the areas of less populated or less attractive. So the move, and that's why I think it's so interesting what you were saying. People are moving towards the bigger communities for opportunities, and then obviously more of the services, not only medical, more of the services are available in those areas and tend to usually be. Here what we have is the same in a way, where we are living in the northern half of the province. Prince George, as you know, is in the center of British Columbia. The north from us and further north is another 500 miles or 800 kilometers to the Yukon border or the Alaska border, and relatively lightly populated, but there are lots of resources, lots of opportunities, but people don't really want to move there, and a lot of times it's because there is no infrastructure, meaning schooling, universities, colleges, and other opportunities. And then to attract investment, a capital in particular, and entrepreneurship, you have to have reasonable expectation of having an opportunity to raise a family in certain areas that are less populated, and certainly and less services are available to there. And in the time that I've been here in northern British Columbia and Prince George, I came here 60 years ago in 1965. It was considered to be a boom town and a boom area. So the question was always, when did you get here and when are you leaving? It was a place to make money and then get out. So it has become, since that time, well established and very attractive to families, but to a certain extent because of economic things happening globally or in North America, that a lot of the companies that were here are either reducing or slower, and jobs are harder to find. Hence, people then start looking at, do they want to move here? It has attraction over places like Vancouver, which is a beautiful city, but it's a lot of concrete, and it takes people sometimes an hour and a half to get to their jobs. twice a day, spend 3 hours in the car just to get to a job. And it's obviously more attractive being away from there. But there are disadvantages. Access to the medical system is one of them. And then housing is another one. And all the classic ones. And then building a career and have certainty that the company that employs you will be around for the longer term. All those issues. And then what happens is, and you already touched on that, is that the danger is that we then lose professionals that we need in this support system, in particular medical and you know, and those kind of things. And you know, so it's a delicate period. In Canada and BC is still very much opportunity of the future. It's just a question of when and how will that look, and how do we bring in the infrastructure. A good example would be, because your brother works in the industry, obviously works with our company and the Brink group of companies. In the lumber side, BC used to have up to about 120 sawmills, and that employed close to 200,000 people, and probably 50% of them has disappeared because of economic reasons and a variety of other ones. And all of a sudden, probably 100,000 jobs have disappeared in that particular industry, or even more, and companies have shut down or closed down. So it gives that sense of insecurity, but also the other part that it does already, it is delicate to attract special skill sets, medical doctors, surgeons, and hospital rooms that cannot be staffed properly. So therefore they can only use the operating room for so many hours a day, where they should be using it much longer, simply because they don't either have the nurses, or they don't have the surgeons or the specialty staff available. And that's a problem to us.
I find it fascinating that you say that, because many of the things that you do now is exactly what we experience here. So, we've already established a relatively large country with a big rural population, it's very difficult to attract medical staff, and specifically young, newly qualified medical people, to go and establish themselves in this area. Communities in dire need of medical and other services, but medical services definitely so. And all of those things are lacking in those communities. You know, schooling and infrastructure in some of those areas are extremely poor. So I find it fascinating to hear that a country like yours is facing similar challenges, with focus on different areas, but very similar. You know, it's very eye-opening to hear that. My question to you would be, where is this lack of medical people, apologies, coming from in Canada in terms of training? Are you training enough doctors? Are you not training enough doctors? Are many of them leaving? Are they not keen to work in these more remote areas? What's your opinion on that?
And those are all the elements, Heinrich, is that we are likely not training enough, you know, then, and secondly, that it then becomes a question of, you know, quality of life for them, that it's more attractive for them to be in other locations. And then the other one is young people. A lot of times the educational system is not overly effective either, in terms of finding nurses here is a real challenge. And as you well know, in your profession, especially, you know, when you look at doctors that have specialties and surgeons, or they need staff, qualified staff, to to support them and what they do, and if they don't have them, that will affect the doc's ability to serve a broader group of people. So the whole system here has to be looked at much more careful, all the way from training to develop. In a lot of cases here is that we don't necessarily need a specialty doc to make prescriptions. It can be something that does not have to be a medical doctor. It could be different skill sets that are equal to or close to. The other part that I believe is important is that, and hence my book, Living Young, Dying Old, that is coming out in the next 2 weeks, is that how can we become more knowledgeable about quality of life, because all of us at some point will reach that point where that if we have to understand your body, understand the effect of diet on your body, and then the importance of staying active, but understanding how the body functions, and not in detail, but in a general sense. And how a lot of times what I find is that, and I was one of them for a long time, because every time I read something, then the next thing that I read is totally the opposite. And so, relatively speaking, how can we keep it simple? How do we avoid from having to take a handful of chemicals that are medicine that fix one problem and then create 2 other ones potentially? How do we find a way of saying, become more proactive and keep it simple as we can? And what I say is that, and I'm a good example of that, I know I'm healthy for 84, 85, but in order to stay there, I go to the gym, I'm active in the gym, I'm careful with my diet, I sleep at least 7 or 8 hours, and that I believe is important. I'd like you to comment on that. And I basically do a plant-based diet, and then go to the gym, and you don't have to become a bodybuilder like me. I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. You don't have to go there, but at least try to walk at least 20 minutes to a half an hour a day, and then keep doing that. Even if you do it initially 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, stay active. And if you do that, already you will see the benefits. And then in terms of diet, do the basic things, and you don't have to go into extensive things, but I do a plant-based diet. If I go to the store, I walk in the store, I go to the outside where the healthy food is, and not the processed ones that are in the aisles, because I don't know what is in it. Those kind of things. So what I'm saying is, do the obvious. Stay mentally fit, keep active, keep your body active. Whatever you put into your body is important. And then be alert, understand your body, to listen to it. And then if there is no system available that can help you through the period, which the likely will not be, then you can do already so much by understanding it. And it's not complicated if you do some of it, and all of a sudden you will start feeling better and better. Like diet doesn't have to be yuck, I don't like it. It can be very, very good. Getting exercise and seeing rewards and saying, that if people say, and they say it to me every day, is saying, my God, this guy looks good, or he's active. And it's very rewarding. And at the end of the day, it's all about quality of life.
Absolutely, John. So you mentioned the fact that, yes, the population in certain areas of the world may be becoming older, but are we really adding quality to those years? And that's the question, and it's a very important one. I think what makes me perhaps slightly unique is that I had these previous qualifications before I became a medical doctor, which was very, very focused on the things that you say now. So As a geneticist, we used movement as a form of rehabilitation to try and get people back to a functional state and to be able to physically help them to improve their quality of life. Then I studied further and I did my PhD in exercise physiology, and which is very, very closely related to the things that you say now. Understanding how our body works during exercise, and what an amazing, amazing piece of equipment we've got. I mean, what we are capable of is just absolutely mind-numbing. Some of the things that I've seen in my research is absolutely phenomenal. And then I became a medical doctor. So the problem is I can now, and I cannot speak for other countries, but those things that you have just done barely gets mentioned in the curriculum for training a medical doctor. Very, very little time gets spent on diet and exercise because there is so little time to try and train these doctors for so many things that it is unfortunately very often just a afterthought to say, okay, but we must look at diet, there's a dietitian, and we must look at exercise, there's a physical therapist. And I think it'll take a lot of mindset and curricular changes to try and incorporate these things as a bigger part which it deserves within the training of medical doctors.
Now, the challenge here also, Heinrich, is, and I agree with all the things, and I'm glad that you mentioned those things because it shows that the issues are global and in other areas as well, that it's not reinventing the wheel. It is issues that are universal across the world. And what I like about it is that, you know, in a way, is that the other thing to recognize is that medicine, and I think about pills for whatever you need, is a very, very, very big business. And every time I look at TVs here, they're promoting another thing, and it goes on and on and on. And saying that obviously the key is that not to have to use those. And how the body wants to be healthy. It does not want to get medicine of any sort that is usually not good for your body, likely. And I'm not saying in all cases. I'm certainly not a doc to comment on it in terms of what they should or should not use. But you know, the body wants to be healthy, and the more you understand it, the better you understand it, the more hope you got of quality of life, which means that, you know, that after the age, whatever it may be, I know people that are 40, 45 years old and saying, I'm done. Well, why are you not doing this? Well, because I'm too old for that, and I'm too, you know, no, you're not. And so what I, at least from my perspective, and say that, you know, living young, dying old, I want to be 120. So that's kind of what I'm working towards.
Excellent, excellent.
Heinrich.
Yeah, John, yeah, so I think it is something that's really lacking within training of medical doctors. So I think it's a global problem. And you just touching on a debate for another day in terms of pharmaceuticals, and I always tell each of my patients that it may be coming with a tension and have X, Y, and Z that we must treat with A, B, and C, but every medication that I give you comes with some possible side effects. Now, irrespective of how innocent it may or may not look, and the value that it may well be playing in you getting healthy, we must be cognizant of every drug that we prescribe as doctors come with possible side effects. And the next step would be that the interaction between medications becomes a problem. And I often see these people that comes to my practice with a shopping list this long of medications that's been just added to them by each different practitioner over time. And then it often becomes a matter of not adding to it, but sitting and critically evaluating and say, let's take off what is not needed here. And you will be surprised how often we can get massive improvements in health if we just critically reassess the amount of medications that we take, very often unnecessarily, unfortunately.
Yeah, and then the thing that worries me about it, Heinrich, is that that is big money in medical products, right? So, and then medicine in particular,
Massive.
and so that is certainly a lobby that would not be promoting being preemptive, and the less you use, the better you're off. And so that's another reality that we as consumers have to be aware of. And so so healthy living, your body wants to be healthy, being proactive. At least we would say to everybody in general watching us from around the globe is that healthy living, quality of life is critical, especially once you get older and the last decade or beyond. To being proactive then in terms of sleep, diet, and exercise is critical, and the other ones obvious, alcohol, smoking, and all the other things are no-brainers. But I think again, for our listeners watching us from around the world, is that it was a very, very interesting podcast, Dr. Heinrich Nolte from South Africa, and again speaking about the medical system in South Africa, but also touching on some of the other issues politically in South Africa, which is still an amazing country, an amazing part of the world, is still evolving, and a post in my lifetime, in your lifetime, of reconciliation and trying to rebuild themselves, and are well on the way and have an amazing country, amazing resources, and on the other side of the world for us, and to get your views, and obviously with your unique background, was very, very interesting and enlightening to many of us. And again, Dr. Heinrich Nolte, I appreciate you being on my podcast. Say hello to your parents, and again, at some point, I'm sure you will visit us in Canada, and then we meet again. But in the meantime, let's make sure we stay in touch.
John, thank you. It was really a privilege that's difficult to explain, to be able to sit here in the southern point of Africa and be able to talk to you there in British Columbia, Prince George. It's I've heard so many beautiful things, and I've seen so many amazing photos and videos by my brother, and I've heard only amazing things about you and what you've done for my brother and my family. Therefore, my parents meeting you very recently. Me and my family would be privileged to hopefully travel to meet you and to come and see where my brother and his family is now staying. Looks like an amazing country, and it's interesting. And sometimes I think it's a little bit reassuring to sit here where we are and hear that you are experiencing some of the similar challenges that we sometimes may think here is isolated to what we're experiencing in South Africa. So it gives us hope and it gives us encouragement, and from a medical point of view specifically, because there's so many medical doctors and colleagues that speak about Canada as an option, wanting to leave our country for whatever reason they have decided. And there are so many South African medical professionals that have relocated to live in your country. And yeah, so I think we've got more connections than we sometimes realize, actually. Yeah.
Exactly. Again, Heinrich, it was a pleasure to have you on my podcast. Let's make sure we stay in touch, and I appreciate it very much. It was a privilege, and again, to get, as you already said, the perspective of South Africa on the other side of the world, having issues similar to ours, and to be exchanging that and watching that with the rest of the world has been very interesting, to say the least. Again, thank you for being part of my podcast.
John, it was a privilege, and thank you very much.